All right. Hello, beautiful people. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. This class is a class that I often do in person. And with the times, I wanted to create an online version that you could tune in on your own time and access the great knowledge and wisdom that your body has to share with you, and essentially learn a little bit more about how you are wired to handle life, handle stress, how your body processes that, how it can store that physically, mentally, emotionally, and how to essentially work with your body to get the most from your life and of your health. So I call this class Foundations in Optimal Living. We'll be essentially doing sort of an overview of your body, how it works, how it functions, and then we'll move into these applicable tools. I call them the 5 pillars of health, on how to access more of your perfectly designed biology. So to get started, if you do not already have a pen and paper, something to write on, I just welcome you to grab that, and let's go on. So this is the first question I have for you, and I'd love you to spend a few moments, or if you feel like you need more time, to pause and sit with this question. But essentially, what is optimal health for you? Um, I think that there can be a wide variety of things that we mean when we say optimal health, and each person has their own unique journey in terms of what they're looking for and what they want to experience more of in life. And maybe you haven't even thought this far. Maybe you're actually stuck in patterns of stress or dysfunction or not feeling good in your body. And maybe you haven't even asked yourself before, what is life like on the other side of this? That is really powerful to gain some clarity and some direction there. I love this in the live class version because I love to hear everyone's perspectives and everyone's shares. They can be really empowering and opening our minds to things that maybe we haven't thought about normally. My next question for you is based on the title of this class, which is called Foundations for Optimal Living. What is optimal living? And then you'll notice right after that, I ask you, is it possible to have one without the other? Something I want you to think about. I have my answer, and for me personally, I do not believe it's possible to live optimally without optimal health. Optimal health to me is a holistic picture, mentally feeling sharp and clear, emotionally feeling like I can navigate and shift through the changes of life, physically having a body that feels good, a body that I can communicate with. I understand when it's speaking to me or when there's discomfort, what to do to support it. And spiritually, really understanding who I am as a person, what lights me up, what gets me up in the morning. That to me is health, is knowing all these pictures and pieces play a role into my health and my overall well-being and happiness in life. And I learned at a young age that health became essentially my number one value, my health and vitality, when I lost it at a young age. And I truly believe it's not possible to have the most optimal life without putting focus and attention on optimizing our health as well. So I said that my health and my vitality, right, are my number one priorities in life. And, I learned this from personal experience, but what is vitality? What is this health definition, right? And we can actually look at the WHO states that a health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. What is thinking about that? That is that whole picture of health, right? We can't just think of health as a lack of disease, right? What actually happens when we're in health? And that goes back to that first question, is what do you want to experience more of? Do you want to experience more quality time with your loved ones because you're able to be present and really connect with them? Do you want to experience a deeper connection into your body, feel more alive, more energy? Do you wish to be more connected to your path, your personal path, unlocking the perfect career path for you, or your financial wealth? All of this comes from that holistic definition of our whole being. It's all connected. So in today's talk, we're going to talk about that. You may have come here just because of your physical body. You may have come here just because you know that I help a lot of people with mental emotional health, but knowing they're all so connected. And I want you to walk away from today with a deeper understanding and a better picture of how you can embrace that. So where does vitality come from? This goes back to physics, and the first law of thermodynamics says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. So this is my kind of classic picture that if you have done work with me before, you have seen this, and it might be review, but I can't even tell you how many times I've learned from this spectrum. My clients are some of my greatest teachers. But this spectrum, so what we see on one end is this OH, and it stands for optimal health. Other side of the spectrum, this D stands for disease or dis-ease in the body. And essentially the spectrum describes that at any point in life, all of us, we have the potential to be on one end or the other, anywhere in between. And really when we go back to that definition of energy cannot be created or destroyed, we're really looking at, okay, our energy is being utilized in a certain way. There's more life force, vitality, or energy moving through the body when we experience optimal health versus when we experience dis-ease in the body. There's less vitality moving through, animating your cells and tissues, telling them how to essentially function and do their job. So our job is to look at how can we actually allow there to be more or less energy in the body. How does this happen? Is it not just aging? Is it not just guaranteed based on my genes? We're going to talk about that. So when we live on this right side of the spectrum, the optimal health piece of the spectrum, what state we're in, the body, it's called homeostasis. So you may remember this word back from science school at a young age. If you didn't pursue that career field, what homeostasis means is it means the body is in balance. Essentially, the body has all of these intricate mechanisms going on, perfectly coordinated at all times, that are keeping your heart cells beating, right? That are bringing blood and oxygen all throughout your body. That is keeping your lungs inhaling and breathing at a natural rhythm that sustains life. It's keeping your liver to detox your body, your kidneys, your digestive system. This beautiful orchestration is summed up by this word homeostasis, and it's that the body adapts and moves in and out every single day and always finds this balance. What happens is as we begin to move this way on the spectrum is the body starts to lose that touch point. It has a harder time coming back to this perfect state of balance where all of your cells and tissues know what they're doing. They are regenerating, they're creating new cells and tissues, healing, repairing with ease. That all happens when we're in homeostasis. And as we start to depart and move away from that, we essentially lose that adaptability, which means our cells and tissues have less energy flowing to them to get them exactly where they need to be to do their job. And they express then symptomatically different things depending on what, and we'll get to this, but essentially what has disrupted that flow, where has it disrupted that flow, all plays a role in how your health expresses. So as we know, we can move this way on the spectrum. A lot of times we think of this as aging or normal aging, and we'll talk about that. Yes, we all do with time move in that direction quicker in a sense than we regenerate. Like when you see a young child growing, there's a constant movement in this direction, right? They're literally getting bigger in front of your eyes, right? And as we watch, an elderly person towards the end of life, yes, there's more degeneration or movement towards the left side of the spectrum than regeneration. But does that mean their body needs to be in dis-ease? It does not. That's what we're going to talk about. As we move further to the right, this is that body's ability to regenerate, to repair, to heal. Every single person has the ability to move in this direction. What this is essentially housed in is this system called our nervous system that we every single day is controlling and coordinating all of those functions that keep us in homeostasis, that keep us in balance. And its movement in this direction is what we think of as healing. Let's think of a cut on our finger. What needs to happen for that cut to heal? We need certain cells and tissues and platelets to stop bleeding. We need other cells and tissues to heal and repair those white blood cells. And all of this cascade of function is coordinated by our nervous system as we build new cells and tissues and essentially heal from that experience. We take movement in the direction to the right. By the end of today, we'll talk about how that happens on a physical level, but that also happens in this whole picture on a mental and emotional level as well. We could say a spiritual level as well. Essentially describes the becoming more wholeness of our tissues, and that actually as our tissues become more whole, we express greater health. We move more towards this optimal health idea that you got clear on in the beginning of what that is for you. So let's come down here and let's look at this cute little illustration here that is a very basic sense of what your nervous system is. Now, this is something I've been studying for the last several years. The nervous system is my area of specialty, and I'm absolutely always geeked out by it. I think it's the most amazing thing, and it's much more complex than our simple little drawing here. But this gives us an illustration that our biology is essentially always communicating. In this image here, we have our brain sending dazzling array of neurotransmitters and chemicals and hormones and information through the nerves and the cells and tissues down to every single cell and tissue. And communication feeds back up, and it's essentially this beautiful dance and loop where the body is always communicating so that it knows where it needs attention, where it needs balance, where it needs, to up your heart rate by just a little bit or just tweak things, right? What we've come to learn is that this nervous system is so much more advanced than just even our brain and body. It's become, well known and well talked about that we have a gut brain, that essentially there's communication coming specifically from the gut to different cells and tissues. It's so amazing. And then, now we're hearing there's a heart brain. There's communication coming from our heart to specific cells and tissues, telling us how to react and respond to different influence in our life. Let's give you an example really quick of homeostasis, just so you have one more solid idea of what is the body really doing. My favorite way to think about this is thinking about going outside for some sort of form of exercise. Let's say it's a run, and we're all going to go head outside and start to go for a jog. And depending on the weather, this may happen quicker or sooner. It's very hot here right now in Central Oregon. And as we go outside, quickly, the body is going to, need to increase its oxygen rate to keep up with my heart, beating a little faster, all these little modifications to help me run. And then what's going to happen is our core temperature is going to rise quicker than usual with this weather. And what is essentially the body is going to do is it's going to send specialized messengers to our sweat glands that tell the body, hey, the temperature is high, let's cool down the skin. So sweat, right, then allows our body temperature to cool down and essentially creates that balanced state until we come back inside, we cool down, we do some stretching and such, where the body is then again modifying, regulating, adapting to the environment, to what you're physically doing. That is a great example of one of the things, one of many that you're experiencing every single day that your biology is perfectly adapting to. You're probably taking that for granted, and it's such a beautiful thing to notice. The amount of information, they say, that travels through this nervous system is enough potential energy to power a city the size of Portland for an entire month, which is, it just blows my mind. There's so much potential energy in our systems, and oftentimes we're accessing a fraction of it. The other beautiful piece that we talked about is this system houses the ability to create new cells and tissues. We talked about healing a cut on your finger, right? But literally, whenever your body and nervous system is creating new cells and tissues, it is creating about 10,000 new cells and tissues every single day. So where, is the body, asking for repair and regeneration? And are you allowing your system to actually get out of stress mode and get into healing and repairing that allows that to happen very naturally? All things that we'll get to towards the end of this. The piece that I want to share with you today is about our nervous system being our processing system. So just the same way we described, we went for a run, we took in the temperature outside, we took in the pace of our movement. Our nervous system must bring in everything that we experience. And this is its way of taking in, gathering information. So it typically does this through our senses. Sight, smell, taste, touch. Intuition is an extension of the nervous system. We can categorize these to make sense of them, right? We describe our experiences as physical, like our run, like the sitting that we do at work, standing all day at work. Our mental inputs are essentially that conversation that runs in our head. Most of the world, it's been measured that about 80% of us have this sort of negativity bias. It's a design of our biology and essentially our mental conversations, how we think, the verbal input that comes in through our ears is an experience for our body. We also have emotional experiences that come in through our system. Emotions, the way we feel about people, places, things around us. I think that the example of the weather changing and it being, a cloudy or rainy day for a day or for a week, does it really send you to a low place? What is the influence of, a certain building have on you, right? These are all emotional experiences. And then we have chemical. Chemical is that information that comes in from your environment, from your food, water. Technology these days is a big chemical experience for our systems. And what happens is we bring in this information and our body's got to make sense of it. So before we go any further, I want to pause and I want to introduce this idea of very simple quantum physics, in the sense of, our biology, everything in its simplest form, it perceives as energy. And what quantum physics says is that if we were to break down anything in our environment, our world around us, it would all be made of the same, essentially simplest form, right? It would be made of atoms, we call them. We could break them down further into electrons, protons, neutrons. And essentially the difference between, this table here that my computer is on and, the concrete outside is essentially the way that those atoms are vibrating. The frequency and how those atoms are organized determines how we actually perceive things as different in our environment. If we're to take this to, or let's just say the concrete outside, it's a much more dense organization of matter. It has no life to it, right? And it's very hard and dense. And then if we have like this wood table here, we can say, that was once living. There's a higher frequency to it. There's more space between those cells and tissues because there was once life there. When you take it to living beings, it's been said that humans and dolphins have the highest vibrational frequency of all living species. They're actually also said to be the most intelligent species. So, what that is saying is essentially the organization of matter influences the intelligence of that being. So, if we are to look at our spectrum with that mindset, our being, we're the same matter, right, on one end to the other. And our vibration, or how our energy is put together in our body, how our nervous system is functioning, is what I mean by that, determines how our cells and tissues express health, whether they are highly intelligently organized, and it's clear because we have this optimal expression of health physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or if we're a lower organization of our matter and frequency, we are the concrete version of ourselves, we essentially express less health, less light, less vitality. And that is the way that your nervous system perceives everything it takes in. It's all just information to it. So if we look at this little squiggle line here, this is all the input, the vibration, the frequencies of your experiences coming into your nervous system. We have a wide variety, and that's what that means. We have, uplifting, high experiences, low experiences, right? To the nervous system, it's all just energy. When an input comes in, your nervous system has a particular bandwidth at which to take that in and process it. So what does that mean? If you were to think of technology these days, gives you a really clear picture of bandwidth. Maybe it's your computer, maybe it's your cell phone, but both of those, today you can pick up your mini computer in your pocket and you can do so many things at the same time. You have a large bandwidth to hop on and write an email while you're listening to a song, pull up something to take notes, all at the same time. There's a large capacity for your phone to be able to handle all of that input. Versus, let's think 10, 20 years ago, what was that computer or the phone like? Was it able to achieve all of those, same tasks? And I would say no, they had a much lower, smaller bandwidth. And it's like your system can constantly upgrade. Let's think of that. Let's think of, if you're living down here and you're experiencing a lot of symptoms or feeling less than optimal, your system perhaps needs an upgrade in the bandwidth. Let's think of it like that. So let's go on to this next piece. So anytime we bring in an experience, our biology, if it's inside of our bandwidth, we process efficiently, we process really effectively. What does that mean? Maybe it was like that run that we described earlier. If you're a runner, or if you're in a relatively good shape, your body might process that super well, right? You've been doing it, regularly, so your body knows how to adapt to that. When you bring that experience in, your biology finds balance. Your biology essentially moves in this direction because it processes that experience. It integrates it into your being. We also all have experiences that are outside our bandwidth. I know for me personally, I'm an on and off runner. I've not always been a runner in my life. And, if that experience was to go from, not running to going and running 5+ miles, that experience is probably outside of my bandwidth. What does that mean? Physically, mentally, emotionally, I might not adapt very well to that. Now, what happens on a cellular level is essentially this information that is outside of your bandwidth is not fully processed real time when we have an experience that's not within our bandwidth. Any of these types of experiences. So what happens is these go on into our cells and tissues and essentially go into, I like to call them our back pockets areas in our body that say, hey, I can put and store that here until I can get to it later. The really fascinating thing about this is that, every human body, there are predictable patterns and areas where people hold tension, but every body holds this uniquely. It's part of our design. It's part of, the first experience maybe that was outside your bandwidth can kind of prime and start to build these sort of onion layers of unprocessed experiences, store into our cells and tissues. And what does this feel like to us? It typically feels like a buildup of tension. Some of us are well aware of where they hold tension. Maybe it's your shoulders, maybe it's those hips, pelvis, right? They're common areas that our bodies typically hold tension. But what this tells me is that the body is not fully processed and has been building up some experiences in the cells and tissues in that particular area. If we take a big step back, we can say, wow, maybe physically your posture or your structure is beginning to look different from this buildup in tension. Maybe it's a functional level. Maybe you don't move the same way that you used to. Maybe you've lost some of that mobility and flexibility that comes from the body. And then we get into that mental emotional lens, and we can actually say that these buildup of unintegrated experiences, if these were traumatic or, a mental emotional loss, change, trauma, challenge, something that's outside of the everyday, can get housed in the system. It can shape our perceptual lens, right? Because we said the nervous system is bringing in information every single day. If we have not fully processed a challenging mental emotional experience, that shapes anything that comes through that lens. We might feel jaded by something because someone has betrayed us in the past. We might feel unsafe because of a situation that has, perhaps happened to us in the past. This is all influenced by what information is not processed and is still built up in our cells and tissues. Chemical information can be built up too. That's the level of essentially toxicity in our body. And when we have more toxicity built up or blocking the flow, right, of this information from the brain to the cells and tissues, mostly the first thing to notice is that often we don't have the same energy that we used to. And once again, we might think it's something normal because it's common, but it's really not. It's the body trying to speak to us and tell us an indicator that there's some built up information here. So that's just giving you this understanding that, our body is beautifully designed, very intelligent, and it's made to process and integrate. That is essentially what the nervous system job is. It's very good at it. In a normal, healthy situation, the body would go to sleep at night and it would process everything on its plate. We would wake up the next day, feel refreshed, renewed, clear, physically great, right? And move on with our days. And it's really become, a multitude of factors that, lifestyle and the pace that we move at and the demands that we are under and the information that we consume is just at a pace that's unlike ever before. And that is one thing in itself that's keeping our bodies from being able to process as efficiently as they are designed to, as they're capable of. Our technology, right? It's always being plugged in. It's in some ways keeping our biology from being able to run at its optimum. There are many benefits to it, but there are some parts of our technology that actually inhibit some of the natural healing capabilities. So knowing that essentially when we build up this information, we are interfering with the nervous system's intelligent and beautiful communication, telling ourselves how to find that balanced state, which means we will eventually start to move this way if we have unprocessed, unintegrated experiences. When we hit this midway point, this is where our body first expresses what we call symptoms. It's really trying to get your attention. Your body is so intelligent. Your body wants you to know that you're moving away from this balanced state. It doesn't want to end up with disease. It's going to give you a warning much before that. Whether that's physically, like we're talking about, the change in our posture, the aches, the pains, mentally, emotionally, feeling foggy, feeling low energy. That's your body's way of telling you, hey, we're moving in this direction and I don't want you to end up down here. Let's do something about it. If we keep moving down this way, and it's totally okay. I've been here. I personally have been down here. It's not a matter of doing something wrong. It's just a matter of learning the language of your body. We are not taught this in grade school. We are not taught this as adults often. I first learned this from a vitalistic chiropractor. It inspired me so much and gave me so much hope that, watching my own body heal through this process inspired me to want to share it with more. And that's essentially why I'm in front of you today. As you move towards that 25% or less, that's where we can, we might actually go into our medical doctor and they might actually say, hey, you've got X, Y, or Z, like we can name it at this point, right? There's something going on. And what that tells me is that, often in this model that we've learned to describe health, we're really only looking at this 50% to zero. We're barely ever looking at how do we really help the biology thrive and get to, a space where we don't constantly move in and out of the same aches and pains or the same disease process, right? We're really getting into a state where our body can heal and change far beyond what most of us have been told to believe possible. What happens when we do hang out in this sort of left half of the spectrum for some time is our body has a protection mechanism. It essentially says, you've got a lot on your plate to process and integrate. And, if you haven't slowed down in life and haven't given it the time and space, the body's way of kind of forcing you to is essentially by decreasing that bandwidth, decreasing your ability to go out into the world and to process every single day. I've been here. This is feeling sick. This is feeling stuck. This is feeling tired. And really what that piece is with the decreased bandwidth is less adaptability for today's experiences. And if you try to keep adding at the same pace, or if life doesn't slow down, you don't allow yourself that space, your body's going to keep building up more and more unprocessed patterns, right? More is outside that bandwidth than was previously. And your body's just kind of on a fast track to getting you to wake up and notice what's going on, what's a part of this puzzle piece for you. Our goal and intention here at Heart of Life and myself, Dr. Jessica, the work that I do and that my mentor has done for 17 plus years and several of us all over the country is really focused on opening up the nervous system by clearing, processing, and integrating past experiences that are stored up in our cells and tissues. The work that we do in the office, this is a physical somatic healing work. This is, we call it neural integration. And what it essentially does is it allows the nervous system to reconnect to those experiences, those cellular experiences that are stored in our tissues. And what that does is the nervous system is able to reconnect. Once it's able to, it knows how to process and integrate that information. It's often happened as it's been disconnected from those areas. And when we actually bring in a specific sort of touch and recipe to get the nervous system to stimulate in those areas again, the body knows how to begin to peel back those onion layers. As we begin to clear up the system and the communication, our body then naturally moves this way. We're not taking a magical potion, pill, drug to move this way. We're actually just clearing the nervous system, allowing it to do its job, and it wants to move that way. That is its natural skill. It's very good at that once we clear and get interference essentially out of the way. what happens here on a bandwidth perspective is that our bandwidth can really open up to capacities that, previously we've had in our life or even beyond. That was my experiences, as long as I could remember being, a young teenager and suffering with, physical discomfort, anxiety, and asthma in my system. I didn't know what it felt like to feel good until, I started my healing journey. And I sit here about 10 years later with such a different experience about my health and about my body. And I feel so good. And I feel for that younger self that, didn't know that what she was experiencing wasn't normal. And that she had the potential to feel so much better in her body, and how that changes you as an entire being. This is the game changer in the work. We're essentially going to move on to our pillars of health, which are all about supporting the nervous system's natural ability to process. The physical work that we do in the office, it's a game changer. It's absolutely one of the most effective ways to open up this system and quickly allow this biology to move forward. But there are other pieces to the puzzle too. This is something I learned when I started doing healing work with a chiropractor as well. Is there's essentially a sort of vitalistic lifestyle, things that you do that you can support your biology's natural functioning, and really that allow the biology to thrive. And some of them you may have heard of, some of them are counterintuitive, just because that it shows like our pace and our society don't operate and live that way. And now we get to reclaim that. That is our gift. That is our power. We can reclaim that. We can shape our lives to fit us and fit our potential, essentially. So let's go into the pillars of health. What I have here, the first pillar is your nervous system. No joke there. We were just talking about that for about half an hour. The nervous system is the bread and butter. It's going to influence every area of your life. And I hope that you're starting to get a picture of that just from our little talk today. We can go on, and I do more advanced level classes as well. But just knowing that this is our foundation. This literally is our foundation. It's going to shape how we feel in our bodies, how we move in our bodies, how our mind works, how our body absorbs nutrition, how we handle stress, and how we handle toxins that can come into our world, how we connect with others. It influences everything. I like to think of these pillars of health as coming back to our foundations, coming back to the basics, the things that are going to give us essentially what our nervous system needs to process and do its job. The foundational things that support your nervous system are getting adequate and optimal sleep, drinking plenty of water, and being well hydrated. And I'll explain these to you on a nervous system level. And then having an integration practice. That is the work that we do in the office. The physical work is a very powerful way, as I said, to allow integration. There are other ways to integrate as well. And we'll talk about that too. I just want to pause with the sleep. So essentially, when your body goes to sleep at night, the design is that your nervous system is moving from a waking state down to a relaxed, deep sleep state, where healing and regeneration occurs. When you sleep at night, your nervous system, which if you think of your spinal cord as your brain going all the way down to your sacrum or your pelvis, are essentially offloading the gravity that they're under upright all day, right? And what happens when we start to drift into these deeper states of sleep is that our body starts to go through what we call somatic waves. They're very gentle waves that travel from our cranium down to our sacrum that are essentially plucking, like a guitar string, the built up patterning that we have experienced for that day. It is your body's way of kind of clearing your slate. allowing you to wake up feeling refreshed, renewed, allowing your body to regenerate. If you've had a hard workout at the gym, you don't get stronger at the gym. You're actually kind of tearing apart and breaking down musculature. It's when you sleep at night that those cells and tissues repair and heal. So getting optimal sleep is what allows that deeper processing to happen. What do I mean by optimal sleep? Is your system getting into a deep restorative sleep? Are you dreaming? That's a question that I often get. Not everyone dreams. Are you truly getting into deep sleep if you're not experiencing that state? And then, what are the things that actually optimize us getting into a deep sleep? Biggest piece is allowing ourselves to set up and unwind at the end of the day. Most of our paces of life, we have a lot going on. And, if you're a parent, that also can dictate your schedule and your ability to wind down at night. But you need to create that time and space that will allow your system to relax. Perhaps that's, something like a cup of tea that tells your body, okay, this warm beverage, it's time to tune down. Putting away our electronics at night. One of the influences of technology that interrupts our sleep is blue light. And most of us have heard about it these days, but it doesn't mean we're, actually doing something about it. Blue light is coming from our screens, TVs, our phones, and different lights around our house even can emit blue light, and they essentially tell the nervous system that it is, daytime. It is 12 o'clock noon. What happens when it's 12 o'clock noon? We create a certain chemical hormonal cocktail that tells us to be awake. That is prime hours of our day, right? So if we're creating that right before we're supposed to go to bed, body's going to have a very hard time coming from that wake state and actually getting into deep sleep. When we turn out those lights and don't have those influences an hour before bed, we can actually allow our nervous system to gently begin to unwind. So we're not starting wide awake when we're in bed. We're actually already starting to kind of move into a more relaxed nervous system state. Reading can do this. It can be a very low stimulation, but that just allows us to wind down. Journaling at the end of your day are all ways to really relax the nervous system. Let's see. And then lastly, sleeping in a dark room, the same way that light is influencing, your biology, if it's really bright, being able to rest fully really requires a dark atmosphere. So that's another little way that you can support your nervous system and allow it to get better sleep. Moving on to hydration, another really foundational way to support your nervous system. Hydration is essentially, we're talking about our cells and tissues and the fact that they're mostly water. Most of our cells that make for our body are about 70% water. When we look at our brain and nervous system, we're looking at more 80 to 90% water. So what the importance there is that if our nervous system is electrochemical, the word electric and water, we are going to more easily stimulate and send those signals from brain to body, from gut to body, heart to body, when the system is well hydrated. So a minimum recommendation is that we get about half of our body weight in ounces of water. Excuse me while I grab a sip of water. Practice what you preach. And that half of our body weight in ounces of water is kind of this like minimum to stay well hydrated. If you're there or if you're close to being there, maybe it's just a little uptake for you. If you're far away, then just start by adding an extra glass a day or put a glass by your bed. I love the water bottle thing. Anytime I see my water bottle, I need to take a drink of that water. And I measure. I use, a certain size water bottle, so I know how many water bottles a day I need to get through in order to really meet that. And I feel the difference when I do or do not. And that's my nervous system's way of telling me. As your nervous system becomes more sensitive, it can really tell you, what your body needs. You know, a lot of people these days are exploring this idea of being more highly sensitive, right? And what this really means is our nervous system is very attuned to the world around us. And the more that we start to understand its language and what we need to find balance, the easier it is for a sensitive person to navigate in that world. I myself included in that picture. Yeah, and that body talking can tell you so much. Have you been feeling fatigued? You know, if you're just starting this process with myself, what typically happens is you start to become more sensitive to things around you. You notice, you know, where you hold tension. You notice what brings on tension. You notice what brings you, you know, lower or higher energy. And this is all just bringing awareness to the nervous system, which is your first step to starting that conversation and starting a relationship with it. If you continue to live, you know, your lifestyle essentially outside of your bandwidth for many, many years, that can lead to things like this idea of being chronically tired or being chronically not feeling well, right? Not being satisfied. All of that comes from learning to navigate your bandwidth and how to support it when it is this here, or how to help it move to a greater potential. Lastly, the tool that I want to talk about, aside from integration, which is something that if you are not already a client of mine, I would absolutely love to have a consult with you and to see if and how this work may support you. It is absolutely an accelerator. I have never seen such beautiful transformations outside of this work and the ease that it can bring about to someone's life. It has been by far the biggest game changer in my life, and that is why I've dedicated my life to this and why I put this pillar, you know, first on this list. I think everything is very important on this list and plays a role, but if you start here and here alone, that's enough. And that's how my journey was, and it was very, very, very practical and allowed me to get to places I didn't know I could get to just from starting with my nervous system. And the piece that I wanted to share with you is this idea, or this piece of integration that we always have with us, is something that lives in your body, and it is your breath. Having a breath practice is a very powerful way to stimulate the relaxed portion of your nervous system and to allow your nervous system to integrate and process what's coming up. Breath practices can be very simple. There need be no magic to this practice other than taking 3 deep breaths through your diaphragm, through your belly. So it's like a low belly breath, allowing that belly to really expand fully. Maybe you pause, maybe you don't, and then you exhale, you know, and drawing out the exhale longer than the inhale is one way to also stimulate that relaxed piece of the nervous system. I will often do counting practices. It's second most simple to just taking 3 deep breaths. I might inhale on a count of 3, pause, exhale on a count of 5, pause, and repeat. And essentially that's one way to also help if you have a big monkey mind that doesn't want to focus. It can really give that mind something to focus on as you're practicing your breathing. That breath practice is stimulating right in your belly, your vagus nerve, which is a very important part of the body and very important stimulator to our rest and digest, healing and repair mechanisms in our body. It essentially must be turned on for the body to be healthy and connected and coherent. Yes, we all move in and out of stress, and that stress can be our friend, can actually help us get things done. The important piece is that we must be able to turn on and off that sort of pump of high energy and let's get stuff done, chemical cocktail, right? Adrenaline and norepinephrine, all allowing the nervous system to work at an accelerated pace. Our breath practice, one last piece on that, we can also stimulate the vagus nerve by creating sounds, humming, chanting. In yogic work, they often practice the Om. And what the Om is it's a long exhale humming through the diaphragm. Om. That stimulates that same vagus nerve, and it's been done for thousands of years through these yogic practices and ancient practices. That's essentially helping their bodies adapt to stress just by creating some sound and resonance in the body. So try on the breath or the sound practice as a way to enhance your nervous system's calm state. We're going to move on to our second pillar, which is optimal nutrients and minerals. These are essentially the building blocks, right, of our body. Our nervous system is creating new cells and tissues out of the information that it takes in, right, out of what it has as resources and what it can create. Our bodies are very complex. If you can seek support in this world, in the nutrition world, and you can find very specific ways to support your system. I like to bring that back to the basics in terms of our nervous system bandwidth is going to make best sense of foods that are the least processed, the least toxic, right? They're closest to a whole food that you would go off the tree or in the garden as possible. That's going to make most sense to your body. So what do I mean by that? It means, eating lots of whole foods, fruits, vegetables, real whole grains, right? Not processed into all these packaged pieces, but really just a simple grain or a meat or a fish or an egg that's raised humanely, and how the animal was well, right? The animal was healthy. These things are so much easier for our body to take in and process, because your body doesn't need to go through the process of, what is this? Let me break this down. Is this something recognizable? Which happens sometimes if we're consuming lots of processed foods, or lots of toxic foods in our environment. Those things are actually considered outside of our bandwidth, meaning they may store excess in our tissues. Fat cells are a great way of storing toxins in our tissues, as one example. The other piece to this nutrients and minerals, when we're looking under this umbrella of the nervous system, is the way to allow our system into a state that it can get the most from what we are consuming, no matter what it is to really allow the nervous system to be in a calm state. So going back to our breath, that is one way, right, to stimulate a calm state in the nervous system, taking 3 deep breaths before a meal. The idea here is that we really want to clear the nervous system of other distractions, so it's not taking in other input, running other things, has less bandwidth to take in our actual nutrients and minerals that are coming into our food. And I think of this as, physically, maybe clearing my space, making sure my phone's not around me, there's not a TV on in the background, mentally or emotionally, really, allowing yourself to feel at peace with what you're about to eat, releasing that stress. Maybe it's, maybe you've been trying dieting and a certain way of consuming for so long and you're still not happy with the results. What if you could release that stress and just say, I'm nourishing my body today with the best foods that I possibly can provide for myself? How grateful am I? Really allowing your biology to come to a state where it can get the most from its nutrients and minerals. Pillar number 3, it's called optimal stress and toxin reduction. What this pillar is about is, really knowing that to some degree we can limit, the stresses and the toxins that come in to our nervous system and actually build up. And, some of those primary areas to look at those stresses and toxins, I like to think of, first of all, is how much we consume today in terms of media, input, influence, information compared to, let's say, our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. I mean, we literally could see thousands of inputs from friends, colleagues, acquaintances, strangers every single day. News information that's repeated to you over and over in many different forms. How can we help to reduce that stress and input on the nervous system? Is we can create boundaries on what we consume. If it's, news or media, we can really create boundaries and honor ourselves by saying, there is only a certain amount of time today that I'm willing to, bring in that information to my system. I'm not going to constantly consume it because that actually brings me into stress mode. It brings me into a place of fight or flight. It brings me out of a balanced state, and that takes me away from my healing and my peace. So perhaps that's setting a boundary such as, I only, look at the news or check my email at this time of day. I only spend 30 minutes, to an hour, whatever your boundary is that honors your time and your goals, but really allows your nervous system to offload some of that stress. And then maybe you do consume something. You can be aware, does it bring me, off balance, off center? What essentially I've seen today is that there is so much information that can bring us to a place of seeing division in the world. We can see others as not the same of ourselves. And what really happens there is our biology becomes disconnected when we start to think that, I'm alone in this, or I'm different. And what happens is your body loses that connection, that coherence between its brain, its cells, its heart, its cells. And that's where the body starts to become sick. It's like that same spectrum that we're talking about, movement in that direction. And really it's about returning to center. So if it is, media and technology that brings you away from center, what is your practice after you have maybe consumed that? Or maybe you've decided to remove it out of your life. It is, to each their own. Some of us need to be there for work, for commitments, for family. So how can you bring yourself back into center? How can you integrate after that experience? I see that a lot in my practice. Another big way that toxins come into our environment is our food, our home, our cleaning, our beauty products. A lot of the industry that, is kind of unregulated. So our produce, we can look at, purchasing things organically. We can look at the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, which is a list put out annually that tells us what foods have the highest levels of pesticides, so that we can figure out, what to buy organically and what to buy conventionally to reduce that toxic load on our cells, knowing we'll have more energy if our body doesn't have to attempt to rid itself of a toxin exposure. Same with our cleaning and beauty products. These can essentially come in, traditional cleaners and lotions and hair products and makeup. Essentially, that industry is rather unregulated in our country. In Europe, I think they ban way more than we do here in the States. And it's all about being informed and, beginning to make choices that allow yourself to bring things into your home that will be less burdensome on the body, that will give you more of that energy and space, that will really allow your cells and tissues to detox and to thrive and to have energy and vitality. My favorite, I have two apps for kind of checking out home cleaning and beauty products. And one of them is an app called Think Dirty, and it will tell you, essentially it'll rate. You can scan at the store. I did this just the other day. You can scan a shampoo and you can kind of compare, and it'll tell you like what ingredients to be sort of aware of and why. And it doesn't mean you have to do all the homework on your own. It allows you to see, that this one is a higher toxicity rating. Maybe let's go with this choice here. It always makes me feel safer about stuff that I'm bringing home and will be around me and my family. Um, and essentially, the other app is the EWG app, and they have a website as well, which you can do the same thing. You can search what you use at home and see if it could be potentially, a burden on your body. And that's where I started. It can be a big rabbit hole. There's a lot of changes that can be made. It's not something that's meant to be overwhelming. It's meant to be empowering, to find out, what is potentially influencing my health, my well-being, and how can I make choices that will be more supportive of that in the future. Our pillar number 4 is mindset. This comes back to, we talked about mental input into the nervous system is that conversation, right, that we hear in between our ears, that self-talk. I told you that most people have a negativity bias. It is a way of protecting us. It is a way of keeping us safe. But in today's world, it really keeps a lot of us from really truly being happy and satisfied with our lives, which means we essentially have to prime our mind to feel and experience the other side of that mental spectrum rather than negativity. The very highest states of emotional and mental well-being are love, gratitude, enthusiasm, inspiration. I hope that this is bringing some inspiration to your life today, this talk, this work, and the human body brings a lot of inspiration to my life, and it helps me reflect in gratitude on what my body is able to do without doing anything, and then what I can do to even work with it. So much gratitude for it and for its ability to heal and create new states of health. So what I call, mindset work is priming your pump, is using your state to essentially create more of that in your world. And it's really rooted in the nervous system's function, which is to basically set and detect things. If your underlying, mindset is this negativity piece, you are going to see more of that all around you, and it's going to be amplified in your life. That is the job of the nervous system. I like to think of it, it's goofy, but it's just like if you were to run into like a small shop and you needed a red shirt, and you could look around a small shop pretty dang quickly to be able to tell if there's a red shirt in there. You wouldn't be spending hours in your time. It's the way your nervous system primes to pick up that information. If you have an underlying belief of gratitude or underlying prime gratitude, you're going to see things throughout your day that you are grateful for, that bring you more of that inspiration, that just amplify that gratitude. That essentially comes from how you primed your nervous system. Simplest way to do this is focus on one of those. Focus on something you're grateful for. 3 things is a classic gratitude practice that you're grateful for every single day. I've taken this practice to the next level. I've worked on doing this every single hour of my day and watched how quickly I can shift my mood, my state, my mentality. And over time, you essentially hit a tipping point. Your body becomes used to this new way of this lens of looking. And it's a practice that you continue to do because it brings you joy, but it really allows your nervous system to recalibrate to a new way of experiencing and seeing the world around you. The other, I think, very important state is to ask yourselves powerful questions. In a time where things can feel challenging or foreign or, unlike ever before, it's so important to ask yourself questions that allow your mind to expand outside of your current reality and into what's actually possible for you. 2 questions that I have been asking lately is how can I see this differently? And how could this be happening for my benefit? These are really allowing me to get out of a victim mentality or what's wrong, with someone, or the way that, another person expresses themselves, and really into a much more loving state, and much more understanding, and just curious. Curiosity, it really can open up that negativity bias and allow our nervous system to operate and live where we want it to, not where it's kind of been programmed to by others and those around us. Our last pillar of health is called optimal biomechanics and movement. And we all know that it's important to move our bodies, but why from the level of the nervous system? And what does this have to do with the nervous system? Essentially, our body is always giving information, right, to the brain. It's that feedback part of the loop that you saw in that little picture. And it's our posture, our movements, our stagnancy is all signaling different information to the brain, telling our biochemistry how to respond, how to feel. It influences our moods, it influences our energy. And what is happening is our rather stagnant lifestyles or postures that are, not very supportive to our biology are telling our body that it's under stress. And it might get locked in stress like fight or flight mode. It might get locked in stress like physical pain, discomfort. And essentially movement and biomechanics, what that does is it allows you to shift your state. It is just like breath, something you always have available to you. Even if, you're working that sitting job all day, there are ways to move your body that allow information to move through your system and not get stuck and stagnant or get you into stress mode. I have a couple of spinal moves that I love to share with people. They're very much like a yoga move. And essentially, I'll share a couple of those with you really quickly. You can do them all from seated. You can be on like a little ball, whatever feels most supportive to you. But one is a cat-cow while seated, which would be essentially extending the front of your body, opening your chest, really moving from the center of you, bringing those shoulders back, and then curling and arching that forward. I really like to move from the central part of my spine and my core, allowing the neck to just follow. I'm not doing anything crazy with the neck. The neck's just following. That cat-cow is a really gentle arch and curl motion that really opens up the nervous system. It's a natural movement of our spine that, oftentimes we've lost in today's world where our jobs don't require that movement. Then there's also a gentle twist. I generally put my hands up on my shoulders and allow, once again, my central and my core to move one way and then the other. I am 6 months pregnant and I'm not twisting very deeply right now, so I'm not going to do that one for you fully. Would be happy to answer any questions or share with you, but essentially it's the same. It's coming from our core, allowing the core and the spine to rotate. Rotation is a natural movement of the spine. We lose that when we are more stagnant or we do not allow that motion to naturally happen. Once again, the neck is just following. We're not cranking the neck over. We're allowing the spine to move first and the neck to extend there too. And then the last one I like to do is essentially like a rotation on our hips. So if you were to think of sitting on that round beach ball or inflated exercise ball, essentially, if you were to rotate your hips all around the top of that and allow your spine to do the same arch and curl with that, what you're doing is you're kind of combining a side bend and the arch and curl into one motion, one fluid motion. They're essentially big circles that come from your rib cage and allow your body to move. You do that in both directions. Those three together are a really beautiful, powerful way to open up the spine and allow it to communicate more effectively, especially if you're stagnant or not doing those types of motions on a day-to-day basis. I usually start with about 10 of those in each direction, upping your way up to 20 if that feels great. Sometimes first thing in the morning, sometimes at the end of the day, maybe a midday pick-me-up. Once again, it's how often do you need to shift your state? Are you very stagnant? Are you, does your workspace allow you to move? And that can be one way to really harness that. Same with standing with a big open posture. It's called superhero posture, to have your shoulders back, right? And what that really does is allows that heart space to lift and come forward. Your chin, eyes on the horizon, it's not down and deflated. It's not up and above and disconnected, right? It's really just at the horizon, open state. That allows your posture to reflect to your body that you want to feel good and you want energy, right? Versus a sort of shut down posture, which is what we typically see today. And to be fully honest, when we're on our computers all day or on our phones all day, right? So knowing that that posture is signaling something to your brain and biology, and if you want to signal something different, you got to open up that spine, that movement, to allow this your state to shift. Beautiful. So that is essentially, that's my last pillar of health that I want to cover in this sort of brief basics, the foundations of a healthy nervous system and of optimal health and living. I have so much more to share with you. If you have questions or would like to go deeper, please reach out. I am always a resource. This is my favorite information to share and have accessible to our community and beyond. Share this video with a friend, family, loved one, and always ask questions. There's so much to learn and there's so much to gain on your health journey. And whether you have just begun or whether you have, had this been a priority in your life for many, many years, I'm here to meet you and help you to reach that next level. And just sending you so much love and so appreciate you spending your time with me today. All right, be well.